welcome to Storytime, etc. We try to post scary stories every day, so please subscribe and hit the bell button to get notified.
Story 1. The Walk.
Preface. I am a 23-year-old woman and I am half Cherokee, from Georgia, USA. At the time that this story took place, my fiancé and I were living on a large farm in Maryland. We didn't use the farm, but we were renting a small house in the property and we were free to come and go around the grounds. I was only 19 at the time this took place, and the only residents in our home were myself, my fiancé, and our cat and dog. Our cat was a lunatic barn cat that I had rescued because I can't say no to animals that need help, and our day was my loyal pit bull, who is a sweet cuddly scaredy cat. She weighed about 75 pounds and is afraid of her own shadow. Our farm was situated on about 20 acres of land and our driveway was about half a mile long. So usually when I would get home from work, my loyal dog and I would go for a walk, and usually I brought my fiancé with me, not that I was afraid to go out alone, just that he spends too much time playing games and using his legs. After our driveway was a 12-mile long road through woods and farms until it finally reconnected with civilization, so it was safe to say that we were far, far from other people, except for our landlord, of course. The first miles was through open farmland, followed by a brief patch of forest and then about a half-mile of wheat fields and then solid forest for 2 more miles. Now that you have a bit of the layout, onto the really creepy bit. So it started off like any other weekday evening. My fiancé and I returned home from work to our happy cottage and happy pets. Harley, our dog, was frantic to go for a walk, so I quieted her and changed into walking clothes and asked if fiancé would join me. He had gotten home shortly after me and said he had seen one of the coyotes that we have around close to the field by our house, but as you may know, coyotes are mostly scavengers, especially out here on the East Coast, so I wasn't too worried and I am very capable of defending myself. I called him a puss and then told Harley that we could go and that we would be fine without him. Laughing to myself, we left the cottage and started walking toward the driveway. The sun was going down and the October air had started to get a chill to it, and it rustled through the cornfields next to our long driveway. The corn was about 6 feet tall at this point in the year and impossible to see through, so I assumed that my fiancé was just trying to scare me because there was no way he could have seen a coyote in this field. Harley was enjoying her time in the field, tearing in and out of the corn stalks on our walk up the driveway, and I knew that with as big of a coward as she was, that she would alert me to any danger very quickly and by running away. By the time I reached the end of the driveway, the sun had set and the moon, which had already come out, was shining high about the fields. It wasn't quite full, but it provided enough light that I didn't need to use my flashlight or Harley's collar light. We turned left down the road and proceeded across the first section of field. The first field was soybeans, and if you don't know, they are relatively short plants that nothing but a rabbit could hide in, and off in the distance I spotted a few deer, but nothing alarming, so we relaxed and enjoyed our walk through the night air. I threw a stick and Harley brought it back over and over again, typical dog and owner stuff. We reached the first small section of trees and Harley stopped and bumped into my leg, letting me know there was something ahead. It wasn't a coyote or a deer, but there was a rabbit that had been hit by a passing car and was still struggling. As much as I hate to say this, there was no way it was going to live, and honestly it's probably what drew the coyote pack in. I knelt down by it and using my knife quickly put it out of its misery as my family had taught me, and let it pass into the next life. Feeling sad but somewhat relieved that all we had encountered was a handful of deer and that poor rabbit, we continued our walk and passed into the next field. This was a wheat field and the wheat was about ready for harvest, so it was quite tall and hard to see through. The field was quiet though, and Harley didn't do anything, so I figured that the coyotes had passed on if there had been any at all. Now this is the part you have been waiting for, and I don't know what it was, but here it is. We rounded the corner of the field and into an area with wheat in our left and forest in our right, and the air seemed to go still. Harley got closer to me and I heard rustling in the wheat field. I saw 3 tails circling back toward the forest. Coyotes. The eastern coyotes are small, but in a pack they get pretty ballsy. Harley raised her heckles and I yelled, "Get out of here, go on. Fuck off," as loud as I could, and the coyotes, startled, scattered off into the trees. I decided to turn around and get out of there before they decided to regroup because I am brave, but I'm not going to walk into a darkened forest with a coyote pack and a cowardly pit bull. We turned to head back and again I heard a rustling in the wheat. A confused coyote? I thought it must be, but no, Harley was standing stock still staring at the wheat and I whistled for her to come with me, that high-pitched ear-piercing two-fingered whistle. That snapped her out of it for a second when my whistle was returned from inside the wheat. All of a sudden all of the family legends I had heard came flooding back to me and I expected to see a tall thin creature emerge but nothing did. I didn't smell rotting meat or feel a sense of dread. Instead I was transfixed with fear and curiosity. I whistled again, the whistle was returned again, very human sounding but at the same time not. Against my better judgment I said, "Hello?" My own voice replied, "Hello." My hand on my knife I said, "Show yourself." Silence, no bugs, not coyotes, no Harley noises, just my own breath. Slowly the rustling started again and I turned on my flashlight. I shined it on the wheat field and what I saw confuses me to this day. Animal eyes, that green-yellow reflection of light was cast back at me but what it was connected to didn't make sense. There was a girl, no more than 14 or 16, crouched in the wheat. She wore what I think must have been some kind of deerskin or fur and she was naked otherwise. She was very thin and looked as through her skin had never seen sunlight. Her hair was long and tangled with wheat and leaves. Under any other circumstances I would have said she was beautiful but at that moment she was terrifying. We stared at each other for what must have been a solid minute or so but felt like much longer until I heard the unmistakable coyote howl from the forest. Both of our heads snapped toward the noise and immediately I heard her take off through the wheat toward the sound. At that same moment Harley took off toward our house and I went after her. We didn't stop running until we got to the driveway and I stopped not wanting my fiancé to know I was running away from something. I could still hear the howling in the distance and we started walking at a brisk pace. We made it back to the cottage with no further problems and I didn't tell my fiancé about it, not wanting him to go out with the gun. She hadn't hurt me so I didn't think it right to hunt her. I was awoken in the middle of the night that night by the sound of the coyotes outside our cottage. This wasn't usual but now I wondered if she was with them. When I was coming home from work about a month later I had stopped obsessing about that night and I almost thought I had imagined it when I had to slam on my brakes for something in the road. It was dark and when my headlights hit it its eyes reflected green and yellow. It was a large coyote. It just stared at my car for a moment and ran off into the woods. I know this sounds crazy but I still wonder if that was her. Story 2, A+Buffet. It's definitely not the scariest thing I've been through, but for sure one of the creepiest. I'm a 19-year female, but when this happened I was 17. So this happened around the beginning of April of 2018. I was out with my family and my still current boyfriend shopping for prom shit. I wasn't really big into the whole prom thing, but was going for I guess the experience. The most boring night of my life by the way, but anyways back to the story. After the whole shopping thing was finally over, we decided to go get food from somewhere. My older brother mentioned A+Buffet, Mongolian grill. We all decided that sounded pretty good, and headed over there. As we're eating, laughing, and talking, you know what people do. I noticed an older man, maybe late 60s to early 70s, looking at me, smiling. I turned around thinking maybe he was looking at someone else, but no one was behind me. So that meant he was looking straight at me. I got a little weirded out, but brushed it off and continued eating. A minute or two later I look at him again. Now not only is he still looking at me, smiling, but he's also making kissy faces at me. I got a little nervous and uncomfortable. So I quietly mentioned it to my family and boyfriend. They all told me to ignore him, and that we're leaving soon. I calmed down a little bit, but I couldn't help but look back at the man. I wish I didn't because when I did my stomach dropped, and I was now on the verge of crying. He's now wiggling his tongue in between his middle and index finger. I'm sure everyone knows what that means. I couldn't take it anymore. I started crying and ran out of the restaurant. I know, call me a pussy, but I've been raped and sexually assaulted before. And obviously going through that shit was a very traumatic experience for me. As for anyone who's been through it. But I was extremely uncomfortable, and I couldn't be in there a second longer. Turns out after I left, my foster mom yelled at him for making me uncomfortable, but he wouldn't even acknowledge her presence. He was too busy staring at my boyfriend with rage plastered on his face. I haven't gone back to that restaurant or seen that man since. And I would like to keep it that way. Story 3. The time me and my friend went skiing, it didn't go so well. This story is from a female. I was 13 when this happened. Sorry if there are some grammar mistakes in this. The winter 2018, me and my friend Jenny got really into skiing. There's a lot of snow because we live in Norway. Usually we went with her dad, but this time, we didn't. Everything was great. We were laughing so hard, I could barely breathe. But then when we were on the trail that takes us home. So here's something you have to know, the trail is kinda like a T, it's like a right line, so when we saw that man, he was coming towards us but we went into that turn, it's kind of confusing. So my friend is a lot better at skiing than I am. So I was behind her. I looked back and saw that man, and keep in mind that we were 300 feet away from him, so we think that he ran towards us when took that turn but then slowed down when we could see him. He kept on walking and then I saw behind me again and I saw he turned and began sprinting towards us, so I yelled at my friend, "He's coming." Then we began to run with our skis, but that didn't work. So, I had to take off my skis and finally I got them off. I was running so fast but my skis kept falling because I was holding them in my hand, and at this point, I felt blood in my mouth. I was tired. I just wanted to stop. But I couldn't. Finally, we made it up a hill, and that's the path that gets us into the neighborhood, but then we kinda like stopped because we thought that he was gone. I looked in my friend's eyes and her pupils got so big, I instantly knew what it was. We ran into the neighborhood and I dropped my ski, but I didn't care. So here's where the miracle happened. Me and my friend are neighbors, just on the opposite side. So her house is closes, so her house is mostly locked. But when we ran to the front door, it was unlocked, so we ran inside and her mom said, "Are you guys okay?" And we told her everything. We started bailing. Her mom called my dad and he went looking for my ski and the man. He wasn't skiing. He had on black clothing, and by the way he found my ski, but I am never going skiing alone again. Never think things like this can't happen to you, it can.
Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe.